Hey, good evening. I'm Undrai Fizer. How are you today? I pray that you all are doing well. I pray that the last week that I've spoken to you, that you've seen continual blessings and that doors have been created by you, not just opened by you, but created and established from you. I pray that. And those of you who are intentional pursuers and intentional, I'm going to stop. When I say pursue, it's almost like we're continually looking for something. Those of you who are continuing in the knowing, that sounds a whole lot better. When I always say continual pursuing, it's always like you're looking every week and still hadn't found it. So I'm talking to you who found it and you're continuing in it. Those of you who have discovered this incredible life that I'm talking about, and you are continuing in the knowing. You're not looking for it. You're found it and you're walking in it continually. And I'm ecstatic over the doors that's open for you and the doors that you've created as a result of you continuing in the knowing. Because when you live and walk in what you know, not just the limited things, because when I walk in what I know grows. So I don't have an excuse to know a little something, and I'm just going to live in that little something. Because when I continue in whatever I know grows. So it's not a matter of knowing a little verse and keeping a little verse until I learn another. Because with God, whatever I know from him that I love and I'm attracted to is going to grow. How many of you have seen your knowing grow? By a show of hands, what you are continuing in has grown. It has opened the door. It has established the journey. By a show of hands, what you know has grown. Write that down. What I've known have grown. Yeah. And what happens, it expands, and then you expand with it. You just don't hear more, you become more. You're not just hearing more and still being the same. You become more. And so, hey, that's a good thing. I'm going to talk a little bit, and I'm going to hold you about following the vision for yourself. I did some writings on Facebook, and you know the scripture, so I don't have to go through all of them. You know the stories. Most of the children of Israel were freed from Egypt, but their focus wasn't on the vision. They focused on Moses. They didn't focus on the land. A lot of them didn't receive the power of the mountain. They looked at the man. How many of you who are watching me right now, you're focused on the vision? All of them were assigned to reach a promise that would bless all of them, not just some of them. The vision wasn't designed to bless Moses and everybody had to fight for themselves. But whenever God puts us together, I'm not just saying codependence, I'm not just talking about friendships, but when God puts us together, he puts us together with a vision in mind for all of us. God didn't call one person and then surround that one person with codependent people. God didn't call one person to lead and then call other people to attach themselves to that leader, to be codependent. God orchestrates a promise, and then he attracts people to connect together. So they all can receive the promise and the transformation and the blessings and the beauty and the power. And we're not just talking about church memberships and things like that, but however you want to see it, because I can't determine the narrative of how you perceive these stories. But I do know when God orchestrates a landmark, and he connects people to walk together. That vision, not just how it's going to be done and who's going to start a company. No, the vision is the overall transformative blessing, the generational blessing, the generational abundance, the generational promise, the generational purpose to be shared from all, not just the teacher, but from all. And sometimes we could all connect with a person without having the faith of the vision. So when we connect with a person who's being led by the mountain, are you being led and are you pursuing the vision of the family? Are you pursuing the vision of the covenant as well? Or are you busy looking at the leader or the person in charge? Raise your hands if you understand what I'm talking about. I'm gonna read something that I wrote earlier, okay? I wrote this on Facebook earlier. Many died in the wilderness who followed Moses, but not the promise. Joshua and Caleb survived the wilderness because they followed the promise while walking with Moses. Many died in the wilderness in the process who followed Moses, but they didn't follow the promise. They followed Moses out of their codependency. They followed Moses out of their slavery, but they didn't follow the promise. They doubted the promise by blaming the leader. It says, but Joshua and Caleb survived the wilderness because they followed after the promise while walking with Moses. Many will lose faith in a person who forever evolves, especially when the many has their eyes absent of the mountain that is giving strength to the one they're following. Are you too receiving power from the vision that the one who's leading is going after? Because when we lose sight of the power that's responsible, we will also lose power from the navigator who's embracing it. Now, those of you who are walking with visionaries, and I have to say it, those, and I can't speak separate, but those of you who are walking with visionaries, are you walking after the vision that the visionary has emotionally connected to that's giving them power? Or are you just walking alone? How many of you on this call are walking after the same vision? You're walking after the same promise. You're walking after the mountain that's responsible for the confidence and strength of the leader. You too are walking after that same thing. By a show of hands, how many of you are pursuing and walking after the same vision? Because if we're all going to the same generational blessings, then why are we trying to forge a path elsewhere? If we're all walking after the same generational blessing. Raise your hands if you understand what I'm saying. I'm gonna read this and write this chapter down. Joshua 14:12. Joshua 14:12. I'm reading from the Message Bible, okay? No problem. It says, the people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal. Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, spoke, you'll remember what God said to Moses, the man of God, concerning you and me back at Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of God, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought back an honest and accurate report. My companions who went with me discouraged the people, but I stuck to my guns totally with God, my God. That was the day Moses solemnly promised, the land of which your feet have walked will be your inheritance, you and your children's forever. Yes, you have lived totally for God. Now look at me. God has kept me alive as he promised. It is now 45 years since God spoke this word to Moses, years in which Israel wandered in the wilderness. And here I am today, 85 years old. I'm as strong as I was in the day Moses sent me out. I'm as strong as ever to battle, whether coming or going. So give me this hill country that God promised me. You yourself heard the report. that the Anakim were there and their great fortress cities. If God goes with me, I will drive them out, just as God said. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? Joshua 14 and 12. They heard Moses, but Joshua and Caleb was not just walking with Moses. They too were walking after the vision. And sometimes we can make the mistake of walking with a visionary without walking after the vision that's responsible for the power in the visionary. Am I making sense? Sometimes we all can walk along with a visionary without looking at the promise that's empowering the visionary. So I'm asking you, how many of you are pursuing the same vision, the same mountain, the same glory? You're going after it. Am I making sense? Because sometimes we follow the visionary, but we're not following the vision. We follow the prophet, but we're not following the purpose. And whenever we're walking with prophetic people, without pursuing the promise that the prophetic people are walking after, we can become discouraged with the prophet, and we can begin to make personal covenants with the prophet instead of making a covenant with the promise. Am I making sense, guys? So I'm going to ask you, how many of you are pursuing the purpose that the leader is pursuing? How many of you are intentionally yearning for the promise and the mountain that the leader is going after? So you don't have time to be offended with the leader because you're busy pursuing the mountain, the generational blessing. Because it's not just supposed to bless me and leave you out. It's not supposed to just bless me and leave you out, but it'll leave you out if you never seize the vision that's responsible for the leader's courage. Am I making sense? I've been writing that. And those of you who have the app, hopefully you've been enjoying it, and there's been a lot of words going through that app. And for those with Google and Android, the app is going to be available maybe tomorrow, Tuesday. I received information this morning that it's going to be live before the week is out. But I've been talking about impartation. Impartation is not just when someone lays hands on you. Because when you walk with a prophetic leader or an apostolic leader or a wayshower, if you walk with them, the authenticity of what you have received from the fullness of the journey will be injected in your bones. When you really receive, not just hearing them teach, but when you begin to receive the full essence of all of the years that you've walked with that teacher, when you really receive it, the impartation will inject change in your bones and spirit. There will be change in your bones and marrow, and it'll speak for you. When you really received from the purpose, the full essence. Some of you have been walking with me maybe 10 years or 15 years or 5 years. If you really received from the vision, the fullness of all of them years will inject something in your bone and marrow, and it'll speak for you. Raise your hands if you know what I'm talking about. Impartation is not just somebody laying hands on you and praying over you. Impartation is when you've authentically received the fullness of the essence of your journey with that teacher. Because the essence will be, like the word says, the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, which will divide the marrow, it'll divide the bones and the marrow. It will divide asunder. It will get in the core of everything. And impartation gets in the core of your being. And you don't just learn a little bit. Your entire life changes. You just don't learn a different perspective. If you walk with somebody for years and all you got is a different perspective, you haven't received the impartation because it hadn't got in your bones and your marrow. How many of you can say that this impartation from walking in this vision, that it's gotten in your bones and your marrow? When it gets in your bone and your marrow, it begins to infect you with purpose. It begins to infect your entire life with transformation. Am I making sense to you? How many of you could raise your hands and attest to that? It's gotten in my bones. bones, right there. It's gotten in my marrow. It's gotten in it because I'm just not following a person. I'm following the Christ that the person is following. I'm following the vision. I'm following the power. I'm following the inheritance. I'm not just getting promised an inheritance. Someone is just not going to prophesy an inheritance. You got to follow your inheritance, guys. Sometimes a lot of us give special offerings to get an inheritance. No, that's a bribe. A lot of us go to a prophetic meeting so somebody can prophesy an inheritance. You have to follow an inheritance. Joshua and Caleb said, look, we heard Moses, we heard you when you promised. You told us to go and look at the land, and we see what's there. We told you. Everybody else denied what they saw. Everybody else denied what they saw. He said, but we gave a report that we can take the land. And you said, I can have it. See, you don't just walk with a leader. You walk with the purpose that's inspiring the leader. You walk in the purpose that's inspiring the confidence of the leader. You just don't follow the leader, because a lot of people following a leader, but you never followed their confidence. And whenever you follow what gave them confidence, it would give you confidence, and you can lead and you can show the way there. If you walk with a leader for years and you don't know how to get there yourself, and I'm not talking about I know how to get there, but sometimes I don't. No, it ain't no I know how to get there, but sometimes I don't do it. Well, you don't have an impartation. You don't have an impartation if you've walked with a leader, but sometimes I listen, sometimes I don't do it. You don't have an impartation. A little leaven leavens the whole lump. You can't walk in a mixture. You can't walk in a mixture. Sometimes I got it, sometimes I don't, but when I concentrate. No, that's not it. When you have the impartation in your bones, you flow with it. You live in it without leaving it. Am I making sense, guys? Let me read another. Many will vicariously gain access to dimensions that they have no faith to believe in for themselves by way of helping you. Sometimes the purpose is seen through a visionary, and that visionary is gone and pursuing it. Now, when we're not following the vision, but the visionary, many of us will try to gain access to what faith will open up to you by saying, I'm going to assist you or help you. Now, you're trying to gain access somewhere that you can't believe to go to yourself. A lot of us have gone to great places because we helped someone who opened the door to go. And we snuck in or we got in by helping. But can you get there on your own? Can you go through that door on your own? Those places that you assisted to go. Would that have been your place if you walked in faith? The scripture says that, and it says the illusion of assisting and servanthood is a subtle way of obtaining access to the tangible manifestations of the faith of another, while not even believing, knowing, or processing the same processes that produce the promise. A lot of people walked with Moses but didn't believe in the promise. They gained access to places that their faith or lack of faith would not bring them. But because they were with Moses, they were able to go. But at the end, a lot of those people, all of them except Joshua and Caleb, died in the wilderness. See, they were told to put blood on the doorposts, and the death angel passed over them because they followed directions. But when it was time to live by faith, their own confidence in the wilderness, they all died. See, when Moses told them what to do to be protected from the death angel, they just followed. It's not that the death angel passed over them because of their belief. The death angel passed over them because they were covered by a leader. Sometimes certain leaders know how to cover you from your own indigence. Moses told him, put the blood on the door. If you do what I tell you, the angel will pass over you and won't kill your children. The death angel will pass over you. And wherever they saw the blood, the angels passed over. The angels didn't pass over because they had faith. The angels passed over because they followed instruction. Right, follow instruction. The angels passed over because Moses told him, put the blood on the doorposts, and when you do this, the angel of death will pass over. But their hearts were revealed in the wilderness. They died in the wilderness because the wilderness exposed the fact that they were not walking after the promise, but walking after the man. The wilderness or the process or the length of time showed that they were not walking after the promise, they were walking after the man. They were following the man. They were not following what was giving strength to the man. They were following the man. Raise your hands. How many of you are following after what gave strength to the teacher? Or are you merely following the teacher? Are you following what gave strength to the teacher? Because if you're following what gave strength to your teacher, you would have that strength. But if you don't have that strength, it means you were not following after the mountain that gives strength to the teacher. You're following after the teacher. Do y'all hear what I'm saying? The illusion of assistance and servanthood is a subtle way of obtaining access to the tangible manifestations of the faith of another, while not even believing or knowing or possessing the same processes that produce the promise. Servanthood without transformation. How many of y'all can relate to that? Servanthood without transformation. I'm assisting, I'm serving, but I'm not changing. Or I might have a different perspective, but a different perspective and transformation are two different things. Servanthood without transformation continues the spirit of Gehazi within prophetic camps. A walking alongside the prophet without possessing the prophet's heart. How many of you have tapped into what your teacher has seen? Because you too are following what he's seen. You're not just following the words. It means you could see the promise. See, Joshua and Caleb could see the land. He said, I'm old. When Moses heard the promise, he said, I was 40 years old. I'm 85 now. That was 45 years ago. I still remember what you told him. I still remember what God told Moses 45 years ago. He said, I'm 85 years old. I'm strong. I could still fight. And I want them heels. I want the heels that I saw. It's been 45 years since Moses said it. If Caleb was only following Moses, he would have quit the whole thing when Moses died. But Joshua and Caleb were not just following Moses. They were following God. Those of you who walk with leaders, are you following God or are you following the man? Are you following what the man is following or are you following just the man? Because if you're following God, that same confidence in your teacher will get in your bones and in your marrow. The same purpose will get in you. You just won't have a different perspective. You just won't have, I say this different than that. Your entire life will unfold with that impartation. Your entire life will take on the spirit of that whole journey. How many of you can say right now that your whole life has taken on the years that you've walked with that teacher? Your entire life. What the years mean is in your bones. All of the years of you walking with is in your bones. It's in your blood. How many of you could say that right now? It's in my blood. It's in me now. See, Gehazi was a servant of Elisha. And what happened is someone came to Elisha and promised him some clothes and money for a word. And Elisha said, no, I don't want it. I don't want what you have to offer. He just gave the instruction. And after a while, Gehazi went and found the same guy that offered the prophet some clothes and money. And Gehazi told the person, Hey, my servant said he said, my master said he'll take them clothes and that money. And it's like, okay. Because when you follow and when you're the servant of a teacher, then your life is represented by what y'all are serving together. You become an ambassador of the purpose of that teacher. That's how it's imperative to not get familiar and not lose honor of people you are connected to, especially those who are significant to the kingdom. If you have access, if God allows you to have access to them, don't dishonor it. Because when you have been given the privilege to walk with those people, then the atmosphere begins to recognize you as a package, especially if you are following the same purpose that the prophet or the teacher is following. Well, what he did is Gehazi went back to the guy and said, my master said he'd take those clothes and that money. And the guy said, oh, okay, he thought he changed his mind. And so Gehazi, the servant or the armor bearer, went and hid that stuff in his room. And Elisha said, hey man, Gehazi, where were you? And he said, I was here and there. And the prophet says, was not my heart with you when you went to the guy to get the clothes and the money? And that's when he began to release leprosy to his generation. He lost trust in Gehazi. Gehazi was following the prophet, but was not following the purpose. Gehazi was walking alongside the teacher, but he was not pursuing the lesson. Gehazi was walking with the leader, but Gehazi was not walking toward the purpose for his generation. Raise your hands if you understand what I'm saying. Sometimes people will gain access to what you believe for by saying, I'm going to help you. So they get to go without really believing in the purpose of the vision. They get to have access to all of the goodies that your faith brought to you. They get to have access because they say we're helping him. But they can't go there alone. Because once you let them go to find out how to get there alone, they feel by themselves, they can't let you go. It meant they never tapped into the vision in the first place. They only tapped into the companionship of the teacher. And a lot of times we tap into the companionship with the teacher instead of tapping into the purpose that inspires the teacher. We tap into the safety of codependency with the teacher without tapping into the purpose of the teacher. Because if you tapped into the purpose that brings the confidence to the teacher, it will infect you with the same thing that the teacher has. Am I making sense to you? If you're walking with a leader and you have no confidence, then you didn't tap into the purpose that gave confidence to the teacher. If you've been walking for years with a leader and you still can't teach, then it means you didn't tap into the purpose that inspired the teacher. You tapped into the teacher. If you walk for years and you still can't flow and you still have no confidence or maturity, then it means you didn't follow the mountain, you followed the man. You didn't follow after the mountain. You didn't do what Joshua and Caleb did. Caleb said, I want the mountains. I want what was told to Moses. He said, I'm following God. I believe God. And some of you believe the teacher, but you don't believe God. I'm walking with a teacher, but I'm not tapping into what the teacher is saying. Because we feel we got to create our own way. Once God connects you, that blessing is generational, if you can look at it too. And a lot of times we abuse the teacher by only making them a teacher and not a shower of the way. We make teachers only teachers instead of seeing that they're showing us the way to the promise. We just make them people that give us information. And so you feel that you don't know what to do. And you've been walking in the path with a leader, but you still say you don't know what's next. Do y'all hear what I'm saying, guys? I don't know what's next. So you're just walking with a man, but you're not walking with what the man is seeing. You're walking with a man, but you're not following what the man is seeing. Because what the man is seeing will change your life. They walked with Moses all them years, but Moses was being guided by the promised land. They were being guided by Moses. You understand? So before I go, how many of you have tapped into the vision that the leader is seeing? You just didn't tap into the man. You're tapping into what the person is seeing. And what the leader is seeing has made a promise to you. What the leader is seeing has also made a promise to you. What your teacher is seeing has also made a promise to you. How many of you can say that you've received the promise from what your teacher is connected to? And whatever your teacher is connected to, that thing has also promised you something. See, that's when you know that you have the impartation. Because the impartation don't come by the teacher laying hands on you. It comes by the fullness of your walk in that journey. As long as you've walked with that leader, as they pursue the mountain, the truth of the walk will inject itself in your bones and in your blood, and you will receive in you the full authenticity of the meaning of your walk with that leader. That's impartation. It's not them laying hands. What's on me, give it to them. What's on me, give it to them. No, when you follow right, you'll receive it right. When you follow right, you receive it right. When you follow correctly, you receive it correctly. When you follow it right, and you're not just following the man, you're following the promise. Most times we follow men. We don't follow the promise. We follow a person, and we want God to bless us for following that person. And God is not blessing you for following a man. God blesses you for following a vision. Because when you follow the vision, you will hear the vision promise you something. Just like it promised Joshua and Caleb. When you hear the purpose make a promise, it'll make you patient. Like it made Caleb patient for 45 years. He said, I'm still strong. I'm 85 years old and I can still do it. I can still make it happen. I just want what was said. I want what was promised. He got to be 85 years old, 15 years from 100. He said, I'm still strong. When you follow the purpose, it'll make you strong. It won't make you weaker. It'll make you strong. But when you're following a man and not following the vision, you're going to get tired and you're going to get bored and you're going to grow weak and you're going to grow indecisive and you're going to grow distracted. Why? Because you're following a guy. You're not following the purpose that your teacher is following. You're following a man. You're following the companionship and the friendship of a man. You're not following the vision of the teacher. You're following a guy, and you expect God to bless you for following a guy. And God is not blessing anybody for following men. God blesses when you follow him, when you follow the purpose. And some of us don't know the difference. We just don't want to say we're not doing it. I could tell by your lack of patience and by your mismanagement of life and your misstewardship of things that you've been following a person, that you were not following the promise. Because when you follow a promise, it's going to straighten you up and it's going to realign you and it's going to recalibrate you. But when you follow a person, you take things too personal. When you follow a man, you get too offensive and too offended. When you follow a person, you're following a friendship. You mismanage the access. You mismanage the covering. You mismanage everything. And it doesn't produce faith in you when you're following a man. But when you follow the promise, it produces a knowing in you. When you follow the promise, it produces faith in you. Am I making sense to you guys? Like I said, and I'm going to close. Some of us have made it to places of faith. A thing that someone believed for. You only got there because you say, I'm helping him. I'm assisting him. But it's funny that you can't get there yourself. And a lot of people are vicariously making it to new dimensions because they want to help the person who's going. So they get a chance to tap into the dimension without believing for it themselves. And when you leave them there to believe for it, come to find out they don't really want to go. And so God is not going to open your promise to trespassers. God is not going to open anything your faith is giving you for people to trespass on it, because they're illegal occupants. And when you are an illegal occupant to a place of faith that you have no faith to receive, the ground will open up and swallow you whole. Oh, I'm not doing no doom teaching. You begin to lose communication in your mind. You begin to walk confused because you've tapped into a dimension you don't even believe for, because you're trying to follow a person there. And you can't get there from believing in the promise and the divine identity for yourself. You can't share in another person's identity. You can't share in another person's purpose, no matter how much you help them. The only way you're going to be blessed with it is if you connect with the promise that's giving wholeness to the teacher themselves. And before I go, have you connected to the same thing that gives your teacher the same confidence? Have you connected to the promise that fills your teacher with confidence? Do you understand that question? Have you connected to the same purpose that endowed your teacher with that confidence? Because your teacher just don't have the confidence to have it. They've tapped into the promise. Have you tapped into the promise too? Or are you just walking with a man? Because if you're just walking with a man, your mind and your life is going to be totally disappointing, because you're walking with a man and you're not walking with God. Look, I'm going to end this right now. Those of you who want to sow an investment seed, go ahead and sow the dollar sign Coach Fizer. Or you could go to www.undraifizer.com and sow on PayPal, whatever you want to sow into this truth today. So once again, I'm not giving you a message, because if you're just following me, this is just a sermon. But if you're following after the same promise that I'm running after, then I'm giving you a secret. See, that's the difference between a sermon and a secret. It's what you're following that determines the difference. If you're just following me, this is a message for today. But if you're following my promise, this is a secret. This is a healing. And this is a power. I'm Undrai Fizer. Peace.